In 1896, Thomas Edison was showing off a new gadget, a strange concoction of wheels and cranks and lenses that projected a few fuzzy pictures of people moving. That same year, in a poor immigrant section of New York City known as the Lower East Side, SAMSON RAPHAELSON was born. It's probably not a name you've heard before, but almost certainly you've laughed and cried at his words. For Edison's little gadget grew up to be the movies, and the little kid from the Lower East Side grew up to teach them how to talk. He's 84 years old now and still teaching us some things about our own creative potential. To create, says SAMSON RAPHAELSON, is to keep yourself in the dock of self-examination until the truth emerges to make the artist. It's also for him passion, the passion to sit at your typewriter for 3 hours or 3 days and look at a paragraph and not be discouraged that the right words don't come until you sweat them out of your imagination. 4 years ago, Neil Simon presented RAPHAELSON with the Laurel Award for Screenwriting, a tribute from his colleagues for a lifetime of excellence. Now, most of us at 84 would take that Laurel Award and rest on it. Not RAPHAELSON. He writes 6 hours a day, teaches at Columbia University, and strolls in the park with his wife, all the while throwing coals of curiosity on the embers of his imagination. I had to remind myself as we talked that this is an old man. But then, you never mess around with someone whose first name is Samson.
They're human beings up there, and do they make sense or don't they make sense? Not camera shots, not wipes and swipes and fades and well, all the things that are important for an assistant director to know. But who is doing what and why?
Most any place can seem to be.
In Hollywood, he wrote for the stars. Miriam Hopkins, Herbert Marshall, James Stewart, Marlene Dietrich. He was the skinny kid with glasses from the Lower East Side of New York whose words were to delight millions around the world. His name, SAMSON RAPHAELSON. On Broadway, his plays became synonymous with the wit, sophistication, and elegance that was the golden age of American theater. His first was The Jazz Singer. An immediate hit, it was selected to be the basis of the very first sound film. Al Jolson and The Jazz Singer, RAPHAELSON's creation, started a new era in motion picture history, the talkies. In Hollywood, he worked with the legendary German director Ernst Lubitsch. Their well-turned plots and brilliant dialogue still delight us, half a century later. SAMSON RAPHAELSON, he made the movies talk and gave the stars their eloquence. Listen to the writing.
Out there in the moonlight, everything seemed so perfect, so simple. But now... Do you know King Boris?
No.
Do you know the Marquis de la Tour?
I should like to.
Oh, you better not. He's really very dull. But anyhow, when the king tells the Marquis that he saw me, the Marquis will tell the Marquise. And the Marquise is the best friend of the Duchess of Chambreau. And she will telephone the Princess de Costa. The princess doesn't like me, but I don't care.
Why should you?
But she talks a lot. And before this night's over, all Venice will know about it. By tomorrow, it'll be Grand Canal gossip. Oh.
Being a screenwriter requires talent, requires all kinds of talent, but you're protected on all sides, and you don't have to dig into yourself. You have to have a self. You can't be an utterly psychotic mess and do a good craftsman-like job, but by self I mean have a relationship to your experiences, a capacity to grow and change and imagine. Now, I'll give you a definition of imagination, which is very important to me. Imagination is the capacity to see what's there. Einstein saw what's there. And what he talks about is how it came to him. You think it was Byron or Shelley talking, how the thing came to him. The girl next door who plays the piano like mad, and really does. Or the guy in the band, the high school band or the college band, who's really good. What's the difference between him and Rubinstein, and Horowitz, and Sorkin. The difference is in an indefinable quality that comes out of your living, that is, exists over and beyond talent. Creativity comes if you have emotions, if you have drive, if you're alive, and if the life that's open to you does not fulfill you, or if it does the opposite, if it frustrates you. I suppose you want to be the captain of the football team and you're a skinny guy with glasses, which I was, see? Suppose you want to be the guy that all the girls are crazy about, you know, and you're a skinny guy with glasses who talks too much. You begin to feel less and less of a person. One day I read a story about a writer, and boy, I didn't know this. They made a lot of money. This guy stood on the stairs of his Long Island estate, and his wife, a former actress, and greyhound dogs. That was for me.
I want you to know that I love you. I want you to know that the 3 years and 2 months I've spent with you have been the most wonderful, painful, happiest years I've had or ever hoped to have.
Be careful how you
In 1934, Accent on Youth was the hit of the season. It is a comedy about an aging playwright and a young girl.
like that.
Broadway star Amy Wright reads the part today. Almost 50 years ago, Greer Garson spoke the same words in London, and Constance Cummings delighted audiences and critics in New York. RAPHAELSON was prolific. 9 of his plays were produced on Broadway. He directed the stars of his day: Jessica Tandy, Hugh Cronin, and the immortal Gertrude Lawrence. It was an era known for well-written plays, and RAPHAELSON was master craftsman. He is remembered today for his work in Hollywood, but the theater was, and remains, RAPHAELSON's one true love.
I don't think I'll ever forget a single look on your face, a single word you said.
Now punish him with the rest.
You have done a terrible thing. You opened my eyes and my heart, and you never touched me. It hurt. Every bit of it hurt. How could it not hurt? It was so beautiful.
Go back a few lines and play with that for a moment. Just, I've spent with you, and on each adjective, find it as you, don't know it until you say it.
Right.
Find it. Reach for it.
Right. Okay.
What were they like, you see? The most wonderful, painful, happiest years I ever had or hope to have. You never realized that until this second. I mean, you've never spoken, put it that way, to yourself until this second. Because there was never a frame put around your relationship with him. There was never an end. So for you're concerned, we're just going to go on very nicely. But I'm just indicating the amount of emotion that's underneath that. Now, don't try to do anything I've said. Just dimly remember that I've said something. My notion of being a good writer was to write something that the critic on the nation would praise. Now, did I like the Schubert books with the little gags and the little skits? And sure I did. Now, would I care to be the author of them? No. I was above that until one day I said to myself, who the hell do you think you are? What do you like when you go to the theater? I love Jolson shows. That's what made me write The Jazz Singer. So I had that out with myself. I said, why am I above that? I am only a snob because I'm impressed by what I read in those things. But I am creatively not up to those guys. This is my level. He could throw a lasso of joy around the whole Winter Garden Theater the second he stepped out. Bang! It just happened to everybody, no matter who was in the audience. We all reacted at once. He was so full of singing and of being there where he belonged, like a fish hitting water. He had an audience. The sheer rhythm of it lifted you out of your seat. He'd say, toot, toot, tootsie, goodbye. Toot, toot, tootsie, don't cry. Da, 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 da. Oh, God, you know, I was a kid on the East Side, a totally different culture, an entirely different language. Therefore, my education came on the streets. And from my reading, my imagination was fed from that. Never occurring to me that I was a writer. See, I had no culture background in my home. Nobody that stood for Charles Dickens, for Ralph Waldo Emerson, for any of that. I got a job after I got out of high school because I flunked American history. I had to wait 6 months to take a special exam, and my father said, if that's how good you are, I'm not going to sacrifice money to send you to college. And I thought he was perfectly right.
Were you a failure?
What's that?
Were you a failure?
I didn't think of myself as a failure. That's a strange thing. I just thought the American history teacher was kind of stupid. But I understood my father's attitude, you see. So I got a job at Sears Roebuck. I sat at a desk at $10 a week, and I answered complaint letters. During that year, not one person came up to me and said, that's a bright kid. That kid is superior. That kid's going to get somewhere. Not one single human being. And I felt, in that case, what's going to happen in my life? And when I knew there was no way in which I could get out of that hopeless atmosphere, I rented a typewriter. Something happened, and I knew I could do it. I put it on the dining room table, and I bought white paper, and I put it in, and I started to think of something. I didn't plan it out. But as I started to think, the first paragraph presented so damn many problems that I worked over it for maybe 2 or 3 days, because I had a guy and he had some thoughts, and also he was going to be in Peking, although he started off in New York. And I made the discovery in those 3 days that I could do that in the middle of a sentence. You see, semicolon. 2 weeks later in Peking, he not only was sorry he said that, but he wept in his bedroom, that dark, cold hotel on a side street, middle class. Gee, what a jump I could do on paper. And I finally wrote me a little story. I sent it out, and every day waiting mail, I got that rejection slip, that terrible thing, you know. At the end of a year, I got my first letter from John M. Siddall, S-I-D-D-A-L-L. I'll never forget it. I don't know where that letter is. I carried it in my pocket for years. Dear Mr. RAPHAELSON, although we are returning, these stories, I cannot let them go without a word of appreciation. Your work has interested us, and we would like to see more of it. Yours truly, John M. Siddall. I became a person.
Blue sky, smiling at me, nothing but
This is the first voice movie audiences were ever to hear coming out of a screen. It is Samson RAPHAELSON's hero, Al Jolson. The year 1927, and Warner Brothers gambled that the age of the talking pictures had arrived. They took the hit Broadway play The Jazz Singer and transformed it into their first sound film. The Jazz Singer launched RAPHAELSON's career, and with it a whole new era of motion picture history. It was the very first time he had ever attempted to write a play.
I unabashedly wrote this very sentimental, melodramatic play. But I would never, even then, will I have done some of those awful things that the movie did, you see. And the movie, I'm not ashamed of the play, but the movie embarrasses me. And I dictated the whole damn thing in a week, and it was overwritten.
The jazz singer?
Yeah.
You hadn't thought it through? You hadn't sat down and sketched it and
Not
thought
a
about
damn
it?
thing. I went bang.
Like Columbus landing in the New World, did you discover suddenly that you were a playwright? Did you know instantly?
The moment I hit that bad first version of the jazz singer and started working on it, I knew I was a playwright. I suddenly knew that in some previous incarnation that I was a mixture of George Kaufman, of Beaumont and Fletcher, you know. Name your guys. There wasn't a craftsman's problem that I couldn't wittily, by wittily I don't mean funny, I mean with a surprising turn that gives a thing value. Find my way, find a solution. That's what my life has been. Technique, craftsmanship.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
It could have been marvelous.
Divine.
Wonderful. But tomorrow morning, if you should wake out of your dreams and hear a knock and the door opens, and there, instead of a maid with a breakfast tray, stands a policeman with a warrant, then you'll be glad you are alone.
But it could have been glorious.
Lovely.
Divine. But that terrible policeman.
Goodbye. Do you know what you're missing? No. That's what you're missing.
When I worked with Lubitsch, we had the most fabulous collaboration. Utterly, why I didn't realize I was in heaven, I don't know. Because I had plays on my mind. You see, remember the ego again, of the writer. I don't have that today, but I had it in most of my time of my life. I wanted to be the sole author of anything I wrote, otherwise how would people know how good or how bad I was? I wanted the recognition to be clear.
Well, what is the creative transaction in collaboration on a screenplay?
I once said this somewhere. If I found a collaborator who never contributed one goddamn idea to anything we were doing, but whose bad ideas gave me good ones, I'd rather have him than Shakespeare. But sitting with Lubitsch, in 2 seconds when we began to work together, I knew him as if we had lived in another world together as a workman, as a craftsman. And we start talking. How do we open? Let's open different, better than anybody else ever opened a goddamn thing. Well, how about this? How about this? After 3 bad suggestions, one of us has a good one, but he would never have had that good one if those 3 bad ones hadn't been made. For instance, I could think up, and I never knew I could think them up, I could think up the silliest, cockeyed gag, nonsense, which I was an earnest young man. I would never dream of using them in a comedy. I felt my comedies had to have an emotional undercurrent. I wouldn't dream of using them in mine. But I mentioned them to Lubitsch. I say, now, this is lousy, but he said, what do you mean it's lousy? Like in the opening of Trouble in Paradise, where he steals her purse, and he steals her garter, she steals his purse. No, that's impossible.
I like you, Baron.
I'm crazy about you. By the way, your pin.
Thank you, Baron.
Not at all. There's one very good stone in it.
What time is it? It was 5 minutes slow, but I regulated it for you.
I hope you don't mind if I keep your garter.
Darling! Oh, now, darling, tell me all about yourself. Who are you?
He wrote some of my best lines, and I contributed more than a few of those silent things that are famous as Lubitsch touches. You couldn't help it if you're working together, you see.
Each seemed to feed the other's creativity.
That's right. And why I didn't grab that and forget my goddamn ego and say I'll share my whole life with him, because we both, I now know that if we could have produced something marvelous together that I could not have produced alone and that he couldn't, who gives a damn if 2 people are writing it or 6? But I gave a damn then, because that comes also from some wound that we've forgotten, some ancient wound. We're going to show Joe Smith or Joe Glutz, who sneered at us in high school, some chance remark as a kid. Now you continue, if you have talent and luck, you continue to be creative. You've forgotten about Joe Glutz, who said this about you. You've forgotten about the girl that he took away from you because she wouldn't interest you for 2 seconds today. But the pain continues to make you drive forward and makes you need to do it all yourself to prove that you can do it. But the hurt continues to operate, and the energy that it creates continues to operate. And we keep on doing it for 30 years without realizing that that's what we're doing. And that's what creativity comes from, too. I never wrote anything that represented something that I profoundly stood for. I just wrote something that I found I could write. Characters that I could handle, a theme that I could respect, a style that I felt was within my grasp. I'm a better craftsman than Eugene O'Neill, just no comparison, than Tennessee Williams, no comparison, but they're much better playwrights than I am.
Why?
Because their life, in both cases, feed marvelously into their plays. Their tragedies are part of the tragedies they write. And Tennessee Williams writes one marvelous and bad play after another, which if he sat with me for 2 hours, I could do miracles on, see? But I'd never be as good as the guy who wrote it. And I never made that, well, for me, I never made that final liaison. I never found a way of talking about, with authority and dramatically, about what I know. I never found a way of writing my mother. I only recently found a few little ways of writing my grandmother. I never found a way of writing my marriage. I never found a way of writing parents and children. Yes, I did, but not really. Not the full way. I didn't have the agony. I didn't have the capacity for punishing myself. I didn't have the heroic instincts. Maybe a richer endowment of feeling. I don't know. But in the last few years, if I died at the proper age, 75 or something, I wouldn't have known anything about myself. But between then and now, that's 9 years, I'm beginning to get a few little insights that if I only had the energy in the next few years, I might really write some plays inspired by my life. That might happen.
Most any place can seem to be a paradise while you embrace just the one that you adore. There needn't be an apple tree with magic powers. You need no garden filled with flowers to taste the thrill of sweet, sweet hours. Gentle perfume and cushions that are silk and soft. Two in the gloom that is silent but for sighs. That's paradise while arms entwine and lips are kissing. But if there's something missing, that signifies trouble in paradise.
I'll tell you who I'd like to be. Bill Bradley. See, a terrific basketball player and Rhodes Scholar, and he's a senator now, and God Almighty, he's got everywhere. He doesn't have to think up any stories.
This program has been made possible by a grant from Chevron.